Hello, welcome. Good evening. I can't believe how many people have their webcams on. This is amazing. Very nice to see all of you.
Seriously?
No.
I can't see anyone.
Yeah. No, nobody. Just you guys just making me look like the narcissist here. Just at when it's just out of friendliness. That's all. There he is. That's a good, fine-looking young man right there. All right, very good. Everyone feeling warmly embraced, freshly harassed, hopefully, this morning. Well, it's Wednesday, the 24th. We are, well, we've got some topics lined up. We're like yay close to the .5 release. As a matter of fact, unless there's significant pushback on this call, I'll push for us to make it this week, to like acknowledge maybe there's a bug or two, but that we're young in our releases and that we need to get it out there. There's just a lot inside that release. So a lot to get into people's hands. Okay, call for topics before we get rolling heavily here. If you're on the call, slap your name in on the list. Otherwise, it doesn't count, even though you were here. And if you have topics, now's a good time to call them out. And no need for my permission. Just slap them on into the topics list, and we'll get to them.
So Abhishek said there was something regarding the Image Hub setup. I'm not too sure exactly what it was about, but I thought you and him were good to discuss it. So, yeah.
Pranav, I'll just put your name down next to that. We'll just good. Yeah, no. Thanks for bringing it up, Pranav. It should be on the list. Pranav, Abhishek. Other topics that we're missing today. I think, if I recall, actually, there's one to touch on with Michael and maybe some others, and it's about mesh ops, protos, and I imagine that expands into a few things, actually. All right. Okay, let's look. It's looking pretty full. Is Ruth on today? She may not have been able to join the call just yet, but she'd been. Okay, good. So she's not here just yet. All right, fair enough. What do we have first? So a little bit about what I was just articulating. This is probably our most timely and critical item to chat through. So we've, I'm not sure. I don't quite recall what call we were in, what meeting we were in, where we're kind of discussing how do we begin to harden releases? How do we up the number of unit tests that we've got? How do we up the number of integration tests that we have? Rodolfo is here. He's leading the continuous integration meeting, that working group that meets bi-weekly. So I believe a meeting is tomorrow. We'll ask him for an update in Friday's meeting, in the community meeting. One of the things that has been a call to action in there has been, well, a test strategy and a test plan, a document that would highlight how we approach testing and some philosophy, some tooling around that, and then specifically an itemized test plan, test cases that we would intend to verify for regression each time that we go through a release. These are some of the things we want to work towards in between a .5 and a 1.0 release. So there's some of you who are on the call who have a lot of experience with that kind of a thing. Um, so this is entirely open to your influence. There's some of you who are on the call who don't know what I'm talking about, and it's an excellent opportunity for you to learn. Or you have a sense of what I'm talking about, but don't have any suggestions as to the particulars, like what should be gating criteria for when a release goes out. When should we allow ourselves to override that? How do we maintain a good implicit contract with the user, with those that might be consuming our APIs? Some of you might be saying, we have APIs. Well, what are those? And some of you are probably thinking toward REST. So, well, we have those. We also have others. I won't itemize them, but okay, wow. So pulling it back to, I'm proposing that we do a .5 release this week. For me, it is time. We have got like 6 different significant architectural components going into this release. It was like time a while ago. We needed to begin to get some of these components out. Think about this for a little bit, if you would. We can come back to this topic if there are. Really what we're trying to assess here is whether or not there's any egregious sort of outstanding broken pieces, of Meshery before we can go announce to the world that they should come check it out. And I think this probably is the release in which we'll spend a little bit of time doing some marketing, spend a little bit of time putting this into other people's hands, getting some feedback. For my part, I tell a lot of people that you all are starved for feedback. And maybe that's a little bit maybe I'm exaggerating that a little bit with the word starved, but we need the feedback, and you do as well. I know it feels really good to see people using your software, and they are. There's been so Husseina saved the day on Monday. The IstioCon is going on this week. On Monday, we did a workshop on Istio. We used Meshery to teach people about Istio. There was a challenge with Meshery CTL. Husseina stepped in to fix that. She did. We also uncovered was probably a bug or two with respect to running Meshery against a GKE environment, a Google Kubernetes Engine environment. Husseina, the topic here, do you want to talk a little bit about how it is part of the plans for this config area, what it is today, and what you're aiming for it to be?
Yeah, basically, Meshery CTL system config for all the providers, they use different type of scripts to generate the kubeconfig.yaml file. So in case of Azure and EKS, these are 2 simple steps which Azure and AWS CLIs are readily having. So they give out the config in one single command. But in case of GKE, it's a series of steps. First, you get the service account name, then get some tokens, and then get the CSRT, and so it's set of steps, a bit complex. So what we want to do going forward is the very first issue we encounter with this type of design is that the OS specific paths were not being considered. So wherever we put kubeconfig.yaml, that was failing if users were running Meshery CTL on a Windows-based system. So I started out with that, but then later I had moved some code to the config.go, and I think we should overall move away from the scripts concept and write everything in the Golang. So there is Meshkit available, which start.go and other MeshCTLs are using. So I think going forward, good to use the we are doing right now, GK, AKS, or Azure in Golang code. So I think that's the plan going forward.
Along those same lines, Docker is writing Docker Compose. They're rewriting it in Golang. So if you're unfamiliar, and it may not be obvious that, Docker and Docker Engine, Golang, written in Golang, Docker Compose is actually a separate binary. It's been written in Python and is being rewritten in Golang. Meshery CTL, this is a slight point of confusion for me, but I believe that today Meshery CTL for sure it uses and leverages Docker-compose as a third-party binary. So along those same lines as to what Husseina is saying is to move away from that and use that the Docker Compose Golang package natively to be able to one, eliminate a dependency that the user has to bring, a prereq that they have to have installed in the system. You just bring that packaged in, have tighter control over error handling and the user experience for the user. And that's some of the same reasons why we would move away from Meshery CTL being reliant on AWS Cloud, each of the cloud providers' CLIs and different scripts to access Kubernetes API. Thoughts, questions? People have a different perspective.
No, same perspective. So I think it's good to get away from the scripts.
Speaking of scripts, Husseina, since you're not busy, message. I don't know if Nikhil is on, but he was highlighting, he was highlighting some challenges around upgrading Meshery CTL. And, I think it's known, at least for most of us, that if you run a Meshery CTL system update, the Meshery containers, so Meshery server, the adapters, the database, the load generators, etc., they'll be updated because they're run inside of containers. So Meshery will update those containers, pull down the latest images. Today, that command does not update Meshery CTL itself. It can, it's just there are a number of more considerations to make. What OS you're on, whether or not you used a package manager to install Meshery CTL, or you did it directly with you're doing it directly. So today it doesn't update itself. Meshery CTL doesn't update itself. And Husseina, do you want to talk about the bash script and whether or not it handles that?
Actually, Nikhil has last updated saying that the containers are updated. However, he sees that error message. So I'm yet to try that. What I locally did was I did Meshery CTL system update in my repo. I'm running Mac. I do not see any issue with locally running Meshery CTL system update. If maybe the issue is when we download the Meshery script and try to start from there. I was directly running Meshery CTL system update. Yeah, there could be differences. Yeah.
Hussein, if you don't mind, and I think this is I don't know that many of us have read this particular set of considerations, but to fully wrap your mind around it, Hussein, give this a read if you would. It talks about individual components that Meshery is made up of, and considerations to account for when you go to update them. This is from a user's perspective, but it will spell it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, good. By the way, so of the individual who, Raymond Wong was his name, that was having a challenge with using GKE and Meshery, he provided a lot of logs and details, and seemed to be very much so on hand to help troubleshoot. So I would expect he'll be responsive in that issue as we look at that.
The meshery.ctl.log does not capture any errors from the config script. So I was not able to make much progress on which exact step went wrong in the GKE configuration. Maybe I'll sync up with you offline. Or if you can provide his contact details, maybe I'll talk to him directly.
Beautiful. Yes. I'll take a yes to both. I'd like to get you in contact with him directly. I'll do just that. You're not in the Istio Slack just yet, I suspect. And so I'll get you an invite and get you guys introduced.
I'm on Istio Slack, actually. Yes, I am there. Okay,
Then,
I'll talk to him directly on Istio Slack.
Please, yeah. I'll even make an introduction, or Abhishek or Utkarsh, if you guys want to make an introduction, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll mark her out.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we kind of skipped over a couple of folks. Utkarsh, you want to talk about this topic?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think we have already demoed what patterns were. So, but that was actually Meshery serial based. So we've been working on a UI interface for patterns, and now there are a few CRUD operations that are available on patterns through the UI. So that's what the demo is about. So this is a new section. I'm audible, right? Or else I'm...
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, this is a new section in Meshery UI. Here you can see this pattern section. What you can do, this is a basic. Basically, this table will allow you to basic CRUD on your pattern file. So here I'm uploading a pattern file called is the only demo. You can basically this is your pattern file. You can change, you can update it maybe to 9.0 as that is available now, or yeah, and delete it. This is right now what we are offering, what I am working on the UI is the basic CRUD, but soon you would be able to do much more with patterns right from the UI if you want to, or else Meshery CTL is obviously available. And this is the delete operation. So yeah, and this will be persisted. So if you're using a remote provider, this will be persisted in your Meshery remote provider, as that is the only remote provider that is available right now. So it will be persisted as long as you are using the same account. So this is a quick demo. Does anyone have any suggestions? The UI is definitely going to change. So right now, it's kind of like we are not allowing to mention pattern file name. I mean, right now, what is happening? Your pattern file name is getting fetched from the file name that was in your file system, but soon it will be like the pattern name that you have specified in here, that will actually become the name of the pattern, and obviously you'll be able to provide a display like a different display name as you like. So those are some UI changes that are in line, and yeah, definitely will be available very soon. if anyone has any questions or suggestions, because UI is really basic right now. So
I've worked with some bright architects, and actually, this isn't a comment toward Utkarsh. I think we've already shown him favor in terms of some compliments, so he doesn't need any more compliments. That's not actually what I was going to say. I've worked with some bright architects, so we don't need to build up Utkarsh anymore. Let's just be clear on that. I work with some bright architects, some bright engineers. I'm looking at a few of them here on this call. And some of them that I've worked with, boy, they don't leave any room for anyone else to talk. Good Lord, are they smart people, but they won't, boy, they just get such a tight grip over the project, over the thing that like nobody else can breathe. Nobody else's ideas get a chance to surface and sort of bubble, percolate, sort of bubble up to the top. Hence a moment of silence for all of you to think about patterns. Why the heck are we talking about patterns? Should we be including patterns here? What's going on?
Patterns are always good. Everybody loves patterns, and everybody knows sort of what, or has an expectation, or sort of what a pattern is about. It's something that is good and a recommendation. So
yeah,
I wonder whether there would be possible to have some meta information, like a description that would also show up in the UI, so that you could actually say a bit more about the pattern.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, right. Some of those things you might want to say are like, hey, you should use this when, or you should not use this when.
Yes, for instance, or because patterns can, they can be quite, I expect these YAML files can be quite big. And then in order to understand what's happening, it would be good to have some sort of verbose description, what's actually in there. This is sort of installing this and that and setting up your observability plane, and yeah, it's not secured, or it's secured, or it's production ready, or it's demonstrating this or that. So I think that would be good, instead of that you have to go through, oh, you're installing Prometheus as well. Oh, okay, I didn't expect that, or something like this.
Oh yeah, totally. You know what? I talked to a logo, an icon, a small visual diagram of would help. Like, or even if you just showed the Istio logo and the Prometheus logo, or what, like.
I mean, you could have a small icon of the DAG that you're creating.
Exactly.
That would be nice.
Abhishek, you were going to say.
Yes, just a thought that popped up. Basically, as we define the YAML, is it better? Is it a better experience that we show them the dry run, not the dry run, uh, the underlying logic or the underlying result that it would produce? For example, this particular pattern has this YAML file defined, and in a separate view, or in a view that beside it, we can show them the steps of what all are going to happen when you apply this pattern.
Nice.
Like
Makes a lot of sense.
in this particular pattern, Istio gets installed, or Grafana gets installed, Prometheus gets, so all of these details can be put up for one validation purpose, so that the user doesn't make any mistake, or the user is sure that he's applying the right pattern, or uh, uh, and two, that it's it's always good to know what's going to happen. Like it's always good to know the outcome of uh, your input.
Um,
Well, both Michael and Abhishek really speaking toward the same thing, and
Mm.
both having it from my perspective like an excellent suggestion on a way of, I mean, it can be, you know, really rather scary if you've got a long a long manifest, especially if you've got a running. Oh, thank you, Husseina. Good. We'll get you introduced. If you have a long if you have an existing service mesh, existing things going on, you're going to go apply this pattern. You're trusting that it's well prescribed, and you're going to take that medicine. Like it'd be nice to know what those ingredients in the medicine are. Are you allergic to any of those, or you know? And the thing is in a beautiful way, showing someone that DAG, or showing them it lends itself to, opens us up to the world of a workflow engine and the world of people wanting to manipulate those. Like it's great that I can see them. Oh, I can see them in a static way. Okay, I click apply. Oh, I can see it processing that. Oh, it's almost there. Okay, great. Oh no, boom, it had an issue on fully applying the pattern. What's it going to do? Oh, well, I would prefer that it rolls back. I would prefer that it restarts. I would prefer to just stop and just leave what you did, just stop right there. And like, oh, okay. Oh, actually, no, you know what? I would prefer to change this around and rejigger the dependencies. Like all of a sudden, you're facilitating workflow design. You've got what do you have? We have a service mesh designer, a configurator. Well, shoot, we've got that in YAML right here. We just don't have that visually. Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Um,
yeah, so just to conclude, so is a description column in here is what we're looking for. But just to let a user know, okay, for this pattern file, you would be getting SEO mesh or Prometheus or those kind of thing. Or because we will also, I think we will also have a visual display for these pattern files as well. So that can also serve the same purpose. It's just that will be like beautiful nodes and all those kind of things. So, yeah.
yep, totally. So from my perspective, like a quick step is to potentially go ahead and expose a column that has any number of logos of the components that are being touched or being installed or being manipulated in the pattern. And that I don't know that it's obvious to everyone. I think this has been shown somewhere. We should probably show it again, but these patterns, you know, another way of referring to these would be is, you know, more or less it's an environment config, it's a service mesh config. The thing about the patterns is they take it further. They can also describe something that you would like to happen over time and maybe repetitively over time. And this particular pattern, it's a rollout pattern. So it's not static, you know, anyway. But to the point about showing a visual DAG or a visualization of what all is in here is that MeshMap is on the cusp of being capable of interpreting this same YAML. As a matter of fact, it is capable of interpreting this YAML. There's a Meshery. Meshery will have the ability to take and convert what's an open application model compatible specification, this one, and convert it to a few different things. Translate it over to Kubernetes manifests, of which this isn't too far removed from it, but this won't work if you go apply it to Kubernetes. It needs to be changed. So Meshery is capable of, Meshery adapters are capable of doing that. This is capable of being transformed into MeshMap compatible or Cytoscape compatible JSON, which then can be visually represented in the same way in which you guys are just saying. And so actually when you come to it, like, well, okay, if you've got a visual topology and you're able to move around, drag and drop and move around those objects on the topology and press save, well, then you're able to, then you do have a visual designer. And like, what a beautiful thing. What a differentiated thing from some of the other projects out there. Cool. Okay. I mean, and then just in general, like leaving a visual topology aside, just in general, to Michael's point, like, hey, the ability to use Meshery CTL, the command line client, to take a pattern and have it applied, have it to do that programmatically, maybe in your pipeline or in response to something else going on. Like in response to something else going on, like maybe it's time to roll out the next version of a workload. Yeah, one of the sweet things about this particular format, this pattern file format, is it couldn't be more succinct. I don't think. Like, it's about as high level as you can get. It's about as short as you can get, which I think lends itself to popularity potentially. I mean, I think that there's some merit here. And to Michael's point, is we go to put in effort to service mesh patterns at large. And by the way, I think I'd shared with all of you that the book called Service Mesh Patterns, it's going into early release now. So in about a week, it should be out and available in early release, and we'll just have a couple of chapters. And one of the chapters is just all about Meshery. Just talks about getting Meshery up and installed, and it'll be the tool that you use to, interface with all these patterns. And so to Michael's point, like, there's a lot else that is written about the metadata around the patterns. Like, and so one of the things that I would suggest that we all think on is, well, giving a unique identity to the pattern, so that so it can be kind of referenced. Like, hey, I'm going to use pattern 5009 as my starting point for a Canary rollout. But my environment's a little different, so I'm gonna modify it. Or like there's these other variants. But maybe I'd like to know, hey, what else should I be considering about this thing? When is it really good to use or not? Well, is anybody else running this? And if you search for that code pattern, service mesh pattern 5009, hopefully you'll find a book on it. But you'll also find other practitioners out there saying, well, we came out with 5010 because such and such, 9 didn't cover it for us, and so there's a new one. And so we're sharing that. Here you go if you want to use the new and improved pattern. So we'll see if all that, if the future holds that for you for this project. I don't know. I'm hopeful. There's a repo. There's a GitHub org called Service Mesh Patterns, and a repo, Service Mesh Patterns. I think it's closed at the moment, mostly because it's doesn't have much, but the intention is for it to have these and for it to be open and maintained by others or contributed to by others. And all of you are sitting in the most prominent spot to make a mark on that, to have your name on it, to have your name against patterns. So we should get that. We should. I'll drop a link into the meeting minutes, and just I don't know that there's anything there to look at, but if you're interested, then we'll get you access. So, Utkarsh, thanks. I thought we were going to do like a 6-minute thing, so this is good. Any other feedback for Utkarsh? Comments on this? All right, back. All right, so Anish, I think you're up. Meshery CTL, tokens, and Kubernetes support.
Hello.
There
So
it is.
regarding token, we have actually updated the config to store the token the way it was meant to be as per in the Meshery CLI reference documentation. I can not actually show you the current platform support for Kubernetes because I have not been able to, completely run it properly on my laptop. So yeah, sort of like, and regarding that token too, so I have doubts in that too. So I'm like first time working on it. So like I wonder like what is that token?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, great question. So to answer your question, Anish, the Meshery CTL as a client of Meshery server, some of the REST APIs that Meshery CTL invokes on Meshery server, a number of those APIs are protected and are meant to be invoked in context of a user calling them. Because if you imagine, Meshery as a system has a lot of access to Kubernetes and to workloads and service meshes. And so ensuring that as Meshery server sits there as a long-lived process and is watching and helping manage the infrastructure, that people can't willy-nilly take Meshery CTL and start to tell Meshery server to delete a bunch of stuff. And so when you sign into Meshery as a user, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll find the ability to, right now it's called get token. So you'll find the ability to download your sessions token. And then you can use that token in combination with Meshery CTL to authenticate to Meshery's API. So some of the work that Anish and Navendu and Anirudh are doing in Meshery CTL is to bring forth support for context. Okay. Everybody used touched kubectl, and if you've noticed, kubectl has you can use the same kubectl client to talk to different Kubernetes deployments, different Kubernetes servers. Well, how do you know when you're using kubectl and you're going to get pods or whatever you're going to do, which of your Kubernetes clusters is it going to talk to? Well, it's going to talk to your current context. It has, so what do you mean? If we look at that, if you look at in your local file system where your home directory is, you'll find a .cube, a hidden folder that has a file called config. In that config, this is just the output of that file. And on my system, I have Docker Desktop and kind. I thought I had Minikube, but so I have two Kubernetes clusters. Which one do I want to interact with? Well, whichever one is listed in current context. Oh, okay. And then you can switch between them. You can set your context. Set context kind. Or yeah, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so for Meshery CTL, there's now a context command. And if you execute just this, it'll say, well, hey, your current context is called local. Maybe you wanted a new one called, well, beloved Bob. Navendu hates Bob because Bob is a name that is the test case that we'll use, and Bob causes him a lot of trouble. So you can go anyway. What am I? I'm totally digressing because Anish, you sort of asked like, hey, what's this token for? And so, yeah, it's to authenticate. And then what I was trying to say is that when you look at given that you might be using Meshery CTL to talk to different instances of Meshery, well, those different instances, you're going to have a session over here and a session over there. So you're going to have two different tokens to talk to two different Meshery servers. So when you look at this config file. I'll refer to it as like mesh config, sort of just like cube config. There's a mesh config, and so it's this file here. When you look at it, here's my context. I just created Bob as a context. It's pointing to my local Meshery server. And it's going to use this token if I want to invoke certain API calls. The thing is like maybe I'm not using, maybe the token that I'm using is valid on both of the Meshery servers, or maybe not. Maybe I need an individual one for here and one for here. It depends on the auth systems that are being used. And so what Anish has just done is pulled out part of this, he's made token a separate object. So there's this tokens down here, and he's helping build that out.
So what happens if I select none as my token provider? When you log into the Meshery, so if I select none as my provider, right, it will just directly log in. And if I get down, if I then do a get token, so that token is basically an empty none. So in that case, that Meshery server will accept any API calls, or you do not need any authentication.
It takes a smart engineer to crack through the Anish. Fortunately, no. What'll happen is if you choose the none provider, Meshery gives you. It doesn't give you a multi-user experience. It gives you this implicit single user experience, even though you don't. That single user doesn't really have a name. That single user, that unnamed anonymous single user, does have a session and therefore does also have its own token. And so it still bears the same requirement to auth.
So I'm really sorry to interrupt, but like, does this user have like, hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, right. So does this user have like a constant token, or is it generated newly each time?
But that token is empty. Like if you just open that file, it's empty for me, I guess.
Yeah, let's I mean, that would be a big issue. Let's make sure that that's not the case. Okay, so here, let me, okay, all right, so let me share my desktop. I'm going to start a new private browsing session. Go to Meshery. I'm also going to bring up my downloads folder. I've got 2 auth JSONs. I realize this might be a little bit small for some folks, but apologies. So let's go ahead and start a none session. And let's go ahead and grab our token for this session. It looks 38 bytes is really small. Okay, so so to Anish, to your point, like, hey, there's really not much in here other than just identifying the fact that like it's using none. And so now you're going to jog my memory. Okay, so if we come over to, so we've got an active session, right, and we want to invoke something that that requires a token, maybe like a performance test. So in the performance test, and yeah, I'm only half confident now about the answer or what we're going to find, but I'm hoping we'll find what I described. So I don't know. I think that this structure still works. And this URL is the IP address of that actually is my static IP on my machine. I think I'm running product page. It is responding or like the get requests are going. So it didn't really matter. Like it should, okay. It should, wait, yeah, wait. Okay. So here's what it's saying is, sorry, it's saying, all right, here's error, failed to add auth details to the request. So by the way, the token was working a little bit differently in the past, where if you had like previously loaded it up, that I forget the details, like it would store it in a cache file so that it would make it convenient for the user not to have to always add the token on. But in this case, so for right now, it's saying, hey, this is a protected interface. Sorry, you've got to give me a token. Okay, well, I just downloaded my more or less empty token. This is it. And it's saying, hey, I don't know what that shorthand is. So we've got some discrepancies in our CLI, like, because in the other area in the, I don't know, for like the patterns, for some of the other commands, they'll take a -t. So a niche, actually a good note to take. We should go fix that. So it looks like it authed. It's probably taking 30 seconds to go run a test. Whether or not the test is successful or not is a second question. So the question is right now is like, well, hey, then just can't to a hacker who becomes familiar with Meshery, they understand that like there's this empty file, or basically that they don't need if there is an issue here. I think that if someone is running Meshery in a production environment and they allow people to auth anonymously, if they allow the none provider, then right now what we're seeing is that people can invoke that they can invoke commands. I think our recommendation would be, if we didn't change any other code, our recommendation would be, hey, don't do that. Don't allow people in your environment to run, to use the none provider. So a quick stress test, this is today, this is this time, that was my settings. It did run it, did. There is, I have to go look at some of the other, so I mean, that's something to think about and maybe do something about. Because while you can explain it away and you can say, hey, that it's against best practices to deploy in that model, you still want to take care of it and really not let people shoot themselves in the foot. I have to go look at in Meshery itself, when it is built at build time, it has a salt. It has a secret string that it will use to communicate, to facilitate secure communications. That secret is injected at, like I was saying, it's injected at build time of build time of Meshery through its CI system. So the only place that secret is stored is in the CI system, injected in at build time. But I don't know that really bears weight in this interaction right here. That does bear weight if people are submitting these performance tests, these results anonymously. People have the choice of sending in anonymous performance results or not. So they can disable these functions. That salt, that secret string that's used to facilitate anonymous or secure anonymous communication, it's really oriented for this, because part of Meshery's goal, I don't know, I was going to say, if you recall, I don't know that everyone recalls because not everyone was here, but part of the genesis of the project was to help answer this question of like, what's the overhead of running a mesh? Well, all the environments are different. Let's give people a tool to run it and test it out, and let's start to collect those so that we can analyze them. Let's partner with universities to analyze those and do research on them. By the way, I had a great conversation with Intel on Friday. They're super pumped to come and impact on this specifically, on that research. So if we go do since we're talking about this, let's do this real quick. Let's go do another test. I haven't done this test right here. I'm assuming that this is the case, that I disabled the sending of anonymous performance test results. So I should see in here, oh, it didn't persist here, which means that it didn't get sent, because Meshery itself is the server and the components, they're all really treated as stateless things. If I go and look at the UI here, I refresh, we're at 1,953, 1,953. Okay. If I come over here and we say, well, actually it is our preference to persist these performance results. And we go run a test for 5 seconds. And the test is complete. We refresh. We've got a second one. Good. We come over here, 1,953, 1,954. Good. So Anish, like there's something for us to consider. Like it's a reasonable response to give to people to say, to empower them to disable the none provider. Like if they only want to have certain providers, to turn them off, that we should, try to make that easy to, facilitate that type of a thing. And as people can lock down their environments, prevent access. That's in part why we're creating extensibility around the provider, because some people use OpenID, some people use LDAP, some people use Microsoft Active Directory, or and so, yeah, hopefully this helps explain, I don't know, some of those idiosyncrasies. A couple of things I think we should do. One, we should create an issue to have a doc that says, what does a production deploy, what are the considerations for a Meshery production deployment? And then I guess, I don't know, it would be an open question maybe for everyone here to think on. It's like, what would you expect if someone wants to use a tool like this? They don't want to authenticate. They don't want to have security in that regard enabled. Do we disable the ability to interact with this thing through anything other than the UI? It's like, well, because even the UI, it's a client. It's just like Meshery CTL. It itself needs to auth to the server. It's able to do it a little bit special at the moment because it's built into the same binary. It's a good discussion. We don't have any time left. Does anyone, we don't have a time left for any other topics, but anybody have other thoughts on this topic?
Could one visually indicate that that non-provider is used? That's insecure.
Yeah, it's a good, like in the login UI, like here to visually indicate that.
Yeah, or if the non-provider is used, if I followed your discussion, maybe that a red frame is around, that you see it here, yes, or in the icon, in the user icon there, something.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, or that there's a default alarm or alert that sits here that says.
Yes. So that it's very obvious.
Yeah.
Or maybe other, other things that one would consider not production ready configuration or secured configuration, that it's sort of obvious when you look at the start page or somewhere that it's not.
It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense to me. There, Michael, in a very timely way, there's an issue out here calling for a configuration wizard, a multi-step form that will help people, where I think that, you know, more or less what you're saying can be integrated into. It's to help facilitate people getting their Meshery deployment correct, connecting Meshery to Kubernetes, you know, stepping them through all the things they might want to connect up. And one of those concerns or considerations would be other perspectives, suggestions. So, all right, good. So we got 1 minute left, which means we've got just enough time for a roadmap. So Pranav, let's plan out to talk about, maybe we can talk about Image Hub on Friday, potentially. Might give you some
Sure,
time to
no
prep.
issues.
Yeah. It's your fault. It's your fault. You get, yeah, it's your, so, and Adina, this is something you should talk about on Friday as well. This is a good community topic. This is
Okay.
good feedback.
I was intended for tomorrow for the CI group, and I wanted to send a mail yesterday, but I went out and yeah. Cool thing is that it was working with the, I mean, I was able to use like DigitalOcean as an adapter, the way you have Minikube or kind to have it with it. So that was cool. I don't know. Yeah. What you said? Friday.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I have a question. Which Kubernetes distribution did you say? You said in previous meetings to use. We're gonna migrate from Minikube or from, I don't know, but I don't remember which one did you said we're gonna use.
Well, let me rephrase the question.
Which Kubernetes installation cluster? Yeah.
So for Meshery, I don't know if this is the question that you're asking, but for Meshery itself, we're hopeful that Meshery is compatible with a list of Kubernetes environments and that we're not necessarily preferring one over the other. That in the demos, in the workshops that we give, because there are so many considerations, we generally write up instructions.
Yeah, now I remember. Thank you. It was about the compose actually. It wasn't it was the replacement of Docker compose. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. It just confused a little. Sorry. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. Hey, hopefully, yeah, we can. You know, I don't know. Hopefully, this is just a high-level stab at what some of those milestones might be. Working our way toward 1.0. Rather than walking through and trying to, explaining each of these, we can generate some discussion in Slack, or people can comment in here. We can further expand. There's a separate Meshery roadmap doc that's in the community drive that has a much longer list of things. I think that a healthy discussion is to ask yourself and for us to think on, like, hey, is that production readiness line, or is that generally available line? Is that before some of these? Like, are all of these necessary? And I don't know that they are. I think that they are. My perspective right now is that they are, but something to think on. And some of these I expect aren't obvious to what they're all about. So we've held off on holding separate steering committee meetings, like roadmap things, and we're not of that size necessarily just yet. But we could dedicate a Meshery dev meeting or to these topics and kind of highlight them. It might be more productive to just expand on them and articulate them in written form, send it around and maybe let people digest, and then set up a time for a discussion. So.
Yeah, those looks great. How often do you want to release? Like 06, 07, what's the...
Yeah, yep, it would be, it's with that, see that because the answer to the question is like, that it's unrealistic to expect that we would go faster than a quarter per minor release like that, or considering what is stuffed into each of those milestones. Then I would so much rather that the answer was like, we were at 1.0 about...
It's not realistic. It's how often will it's your wish to?
Once a quarter. It's actually
once a quarter. Okay. Every 3 months.
There's there's a little bit about that perspective it's in this doc, and it's actually up on the Meshery docs now as well. So it's a little bit about like under the project contributing releases. Where is it? I don't know. We wrote this almost 2 years ago now. Yeah. But yeah, about once a quarter. I know it says minor release here. Minor releases, like, that would be great. We have too much stuffed into the milestones currently to make that happen. We don't necessarily have to hit a 1.0 in order for people to start using it in production. As a matter of fact, there are production readiness components of Meshery today and have been for a long time. A lot of that revolves around the performance management section. But so, okay. Well, got a couple of topics for Friday. So Adina's on the list and Pranav is on the list. Or Adina, unless that gets covered tomorrow in the CI call. Nice. Okay. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Great. Thanks. Wow, I missed what you... Oh, okay, good. Yep. Very nice to see you guys. See you guys all tomorrow and Friday.
Yes.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.